Good morning, this is Elliot from Hexcam and the Aerial Academy. I've just done my Phantom 3 update video, which you could find elsewhere. And what we're going to do now is we're going to update the Inspire. Now, I originally bought an Inspire, Inspire 1 last year, and then I later bought the X5. So I'm running effectively an Inspire and an Inspire 1 Pro. Now, the thing to remember if you're doing that is that it's the camera that tells the aircraft what it is. So if you are using both cameras or multiple cameras, you're going to need to perform an update with each camera. So initially I'm going to do the update with the X3, and then afterwards I'm going to do the X5 update to update the Inspire Pro. And for that you will need two different firmwares. So you're going to need to download the correct firmwares from the DJI website. So under DJI Inspire, you're going to need to go to the Inspire 1 downloads page and download the latest Inspire 1 firmware as the zip file. And then what I tend to do is I unzip those into a folder. So I've got a folder on my desktop which has all the firmware in it. So I've got the X3, the X5, and I've also got the Phantom 3 firmware there as well. So basically, make sure you've downloaded the correct firmware. So for the Inspire 1, I'm doing this on the 8th of July 2016. So this is 1.9.1.30, which came out yesterday. It's up to you whether you decide to update straight away or to wait. You know, this has to be carried out at your own risk. You need to test fly after you've carried out the firmware update. So make sure that you're happy performing the update and test flying it afterwards. Quite often people who update early, like myself, will post on the forums, make sure there's no glitches, and that can help to inform people, but you've always got to take it at your own risk. When you're doing the Inspire Pro, an error that sometimes happens with people when they're doing updates is they particularly with the Inspire Pro, they download the wrong firmware. So if I go to the Inspire 1 Pro and Raw downloads page, you've got, if you look carefully, you've got firmware, but the top firmware is Inspire 1 Raw firmware. So you'd only need that if you've got the Raw version, which I don't. And slightly lower down, you've got the latest Inspire 1 Pro firmware. So if you've got the standard X5 camera, that's the one you want. So the numbers are similar, so just be careful. Make sure you've got the right one, because if you put the wrong one on there, it just won't update, and then you'll mess about for a while and then finally realise probably. So I'm downloading that. I've already downloaded that firmware and I've unzipped it. Once you've unzipped the firmware, all you should have is a .bin file. So it's the correct firmware. So this is the X5 one, 01.09.01.30.bin, and then you've got the X3 firmware, which is empty at the moment because I haven't put it in there, but I'll grab that in a second. Okay, so make sure you've got the correct firmware and got it somewhere on your desktop. So I need that X3 firmware, so I'm just going to unzip that from my downloads folder. Okay, so that's the firmware there. So I can extract all, and I'm going to extract it to the folder that I've already got set up. Firmware, X3, select folder, extract. I tend to use PCs or Windows for performing firmware updates. I don't know why. I do have a Mac, but I found it always works on Windows. Should work fine doing similar thing on Mac as well, but the files can sometimes look a bit different. Just make sure you've got the bin file on the SD card. That's all you need. So there's the X3 firmware update with my bin file. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my micro SD card that I'm going to use for the X3. I'm going to put it in and attach the camera, and then I'm going to format the SD card, but I'll always format in the aircraft. I'm not going to format it in the computer. Okay, so get the X3 camera on, get everything booted up. It should give me the option of opening DJI Go. There we go. I use Lightyear as well, so I've got that option there too. Power up the aircraft. So it recognises straight away that it needs an update, and it recognises the aircraft, and when we go in it will recognise that there are updates required. So it's telling me updates required in the aircraft status at the top here. But I'm going to ignore that for the moment, and the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to format the SD card so it's clean, and that is done. And I'm then going to shut down everything. Now when you're performing an update, if you've got a required update on both the aircraft and the transmitter, always update the aircraft first. So from this point on, we are not going to turn the transmitter back on until the aircraft is fully updated. So I'm just going to put that out of the way. Grab my X3. I'm going to get the SD card out, put it back in the reader. And I'm just going to go back to my firmware, my X3 firmware, copy that, sorry my thing's playing up a bit at the moment, and then I'm going to copy that into the root directory of the SD card. So as that's pasting in, what we've now got, if I just get rid of that again, on the micro SD card we've now got the DJI folder, and the bin file is outside the DJI folder in the root directory of the micro SD card. So I can now eject the micro SD card, put it back in the aircraft. And at this point, without turning on the transmitter, make sure your props are off as well. Always take your props off when you're doing any updates or anything. I'm going to turn it on, and we're going to listen out for the sounds as they start up. Okay, so the camera's going to boot, and then we'll hear it starting to read the SD card. Okay, so the dit sound is it reading the SD card. And as I said on the Phantom update, at this point you're ignoring any flashy lights, you're ignoring any movements of the gimbal, you're ignoring everything except this sound. So it's now changed to da, which you should be able to pick up on here. And that is the sound it makes when it's updating. And at this point, you need to leave it alone. You need to ignore the fact that the lights on the battery may flash, the light on the back of the Inspire may flash, and these lights may go on and off at random intervals. Everything except the sound is irrelevant, and you've got to be patient. So, go away and have a break, and it may take about 10, 15, sometimes even 20 minutes, but it will work, and you just need to be patient with it. Okay, so leave it alone. And what you're listening for is the sound going from da 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 to da da da. So from 4 short beeps to a long beep followed by 2 short beeps. Okay, and that's what we're listening out for. So just be patient with it and let it do its thing. I'll be back in a minute. Okay, so we're about 10 minutes in. And it didn't take a huge amount of time actually, but what we've got now is the aircraft has stopped going da 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 da, and it's now going da da da. At that point you can turn the aircraft off, and now what we'd normally do is cycle through all of our batteries. So the battery update is the batteries are updated separately, the firmware, so make sure you've got your batteries going through as are numbered, so we know. So that was number 6, so I'm going to go backwards. As I started number 6, I'm going to go to number 5, put number 5 in, and then what you'll find is it'll boot back up. Again, I haven't touched the transmitter yet, and it should start to go through the update again. You should hear it start to read. Unless, of course, it doesn't require a battery update, which it may not. Okay, so if your firmware hasn't carried out a battery update, you'll find at this point that the battery update won't start. So in this case, it appears that this latest firmware does not have a battery update, so it read the SD card, then hasn't started going and all that. So as a result, I don't think we need to update the batteries, which is good. So now what I'm going to go on to do is to update the X5. So I'm going to turn off the I'm going to do the X5 first. No, I'm not. I'm going to we're going to do the X5 first, because what I don't want to do is update the transmitter and then have it not talk to me. So I've done the X3. So the X3 is now updated, and that's updated some of the components of the aircraft. And what will now have to happen is the X5 will need to update itself. So I'm going to put the X5 on. Let's get the X3 out of the way, because that's done for the moment. I'm going to put another SD card in it, because I want to keep the firmware on there in case the batteries do decide they need updating or anything. So I'm going to use a different SD card in the X5. And the first thing I'm going to do again is to format the SD card. So I'm going to bring up the app. Hopefully it will talk to me. I'm going to bring up the app. Bring up the aircraft. Okay, so we get the app open. It knows it's an Inspire Pro, which is promising. Go into the camera. Possibly won't give me the camera. Interestingly, with the new DJI Geo, it's bringing me up warnings that I'm in Class D airspace, which is great. But I'm going to go in, it says updates required. I'm going to go down, I'm going to format that SD card as I did before. So I'm formatting the SD card in the X5. If that hadn't worked, I could have done it in the X3. It doesn't really matter as long as it's formatted in the aircraft, so it's giving it the DJI file system. So that's done. I'm going to turn it off again. It's probably giving me no signal because I'm on a later version of the actual app than the transmitter can cope with at the moment. So get the SD card out and get my firmware on there, and I'll be back. So that's exactly the same as the X3, so I'll be back when that's done. Right, so I've got the firmware for the X5 on the micro SD card, so that can now go in. And I'll turn it on. And if you were doing the X5 on its own, obviously you would just do this. You won't have to worry about the X3, or the same if you're just using the X3. So it'll boot up. The transmitter is off, just the app, I left the app on. So okay, it's starting to read. And we should fairly quickly get the update sound. There you go. So that is now updating. And again, we'll leave that for a little while. Shouldn't take too long because the X3 will already have performed some of the system updates. So it's 10:48, so we'll see how that goes. Okay, but we'll leave you to it for now. Okay, again, it's now changed from the update noise to I'm finished. So we now know that the aircraft is updated for both the X5 camera and for the X3 camera. So what we're going to go and do now is update the transmitters. So if you're only using a single transmitter, you've got to update one of them. If you've got two transmitters, so pilot and camera operator transmitter, then you need to update both. So I've got two transmitters to update, so I'll just show you how to update one, but they update in exactly the same way. So there's no reason that this shouldn't work fine. So let's just make sure that I always tend to make sure that the app is closed down before we turn the transmitter on. So if we now turn the transmitter on, this is the pilot transmitter first. That'll open DJI Go for me. And I'll just go into the camera, even though I haven't got the aircraft on, so I'm going to do this with the aircraft off. It says no signal, but if I click on the no signal button there, it will tell me firmware is of the latest version. So it looks like I might already have updated the actual radio itself. So it looks like the radio doesn't need updating. If at this point you wanted to update the radio, if it did need an update, you click on where it says firmware update required, click on there. It will tell you to download the firmware and then guide you through installing it. So you install the firmware now on the transmitter through the app, not through the SD card as you did on the early firmwares. Alright, I'm going to try that again, just make sure that my camera operator one is also updated. So I'm just going to shut that app down again, unplug this, turn off the pilot one, bring up my camera operator one. The camera operator one may not have updated. I don't know why that's already updated, but it may just have been that for some reason I'd already done it. So we'll turn on the camera operator transmitter and just check that that's updated as well. If I plug in the USB thing, it'll work better. Right, here we go. Alright, okay, so DJI Go again, into the camera, so it says this time no signal, into here, firmware is of the latest version, so I don't need to update the transmitters, so that's good. So what we'll do now is just double check that the aircraft is talking now to the transmitter with the X5 on it, and also with the X3 as well. So I get this back on here. I'm always shutting down the app before I restart the transmitter. It just seems to make it connect better. Alright, so there we go, DJI Go. Then we'll turn the aircraft on. Sometimes when the aircraft is very close to the transmitter, you don't get the video transmission. So we're just waiting for the aircraft to connect. It should tell me it's an an Inspire 1 Pro, so it's detected that, so that's a good sign. We'll come into camera. Firmware is of the latest version. All good. Let's get into auto mode, just in case. I've got no signal at the moment from the aircraft, so that's sometimes an indication that it's too close, because if I take that further away, I'm hoping that will come. If it doesn't, then just try rebooting and have a look through the software and make sure everything's right. Okay, but I am getting information from the aircraft. The aircraft motors will spin up, I think. Yeah, the aircraft's fine, and there I am. Okay, looking funky in my son's headset. Because it's a restricted area where we're working, we're just near Norwich Airport. The new app has the DJI Geo system to allow you to unlock it. So I'm authorised to fly in this area, and I accept full responsibility for my flight. Please make sure that you are flying safely. Please make sure if in the UK you're operating commercially that you've got the right certificates and so on, and insurance. Otherwise, enjoy your flying. I will test flight this later, and just in time, the sun has come out as it's been raining all morning. Anyway, so that's that. That is updating the X3 and the X5 cameras. It is also working from the camera operator remote, so that's my my camera operator remote there, and so I have control there as well of the X5. I'm sure the X3 will be fine as well. So that's it basically. That's updating the two systems. Any questions, drop them into the comments. Cheers. Bye.